All right, good morning, folks. Welcome to the last panel of COMEX 2024. My name is Brandon Rich. I'm an IT architect at the University of Notre Dame, and I'm just really pleased to be a part of this conversation. I want to thank Bob Flynn and Internet 2 for the invitation here to share this with all of you, this conversation that has been ongoing about generative AI in higher education. And I say ongoing because I've had the pleasure of knowing these colleagues here for a little while over the past years. We've all sort of been exploring this space. We had each of these institutions represented last November when Notre Dame had the pleasure of hosting them at the Notre Dame AI Forum, which was a great event and one that we hope to replicate later this year. And the conversation has continued up to and including last night at the Billy Goat Tavern. So we sort of rehearsed this panel just as we chatted amongst ourselves. So I can tell you for sure that you're going to have a lot of great content today, a lot of great insights coming from this panel. So with that, I would like to turn it over to our panelists for introductions. Please, if you would, tell your name, your institution, what you do, and give us a little bit of an overview of what is going on with generative AI at your school. We'll start here.
Good morning. My name is Jefferson Burson. I head up enterprise architecture for Harvard University, and working for the chief technology officer, myself, my peers, and a number of teams have been working on a variety of generative AI applications and projects over the course of the last year. Perhaps the most notable was developing and deploying a sort of a university-wide sandbox for generative AI that exposed students, faculty, and staff to multiple generative AI LLMs for general purpose use. And that was we approached it as a sandbox experiment to start testing out different use cases within a university setting at Harvard for generative AI.
Good morning. My name is Erin Sicuranza. I am the Director of Academic Technology Services at the University of Delaware. We are one of 8 central IT reporting units, but I do also partner extensively with the academic side and the provost side. So I was sort of uniquely positioned to span both teaching and learning and AI. For that reason, I am a co-founder of the AI for Teaching and Learning Working Group that is about 33 members strong now, meets monthly, and has been since last May. We are finally starting to produce some guidance and some seminars for education. I am also a co-PI of a research study run through Ithaca S&R called Making AI Generative for Higher Education. We're one of 20 institutions in this 2-year research study. Our focus area is AI literacy. And finally, I am the director of a unit that is engaging in a development project using AI and our repository of lecture capture videos to produce study tools for students based on a language model. It is a small-scale project, but has sort of taken on some wings and become fairly exciting. Thank you.
And I'm Don Lambert with the University of Michigan. I am the director of emerging technology and AI services. My team is offering AI services to campus as a whole. We have 3 products, UMGPT, which is our alternate solution for JATGPT, meets our requirements for security and privacy at the university. We have a no-code solution called Maisie. This allows you to bring in your own data to the solution. It's a LangChain-based solution. You can go ahead then and start querying against your data. This is a great opportunity for people to build their help desk chatbots. We can connect it to Canvas, which is our learning management system. Allows faculty to go ahead and build a course-specific chatbot. The third service is API access. And what we're providing in that space is we've already done the contract work. We're providing centralized billing and the safeguards around it.
All right, so thank you all for being here. A lot of institutions here and elsewhere are really interested in what they should be doing with generative AI, what are the opportunities, and trying to figure out the role of the IT organization in this new era. Because I think we all see this as an inflection point, something we really need to be engaged in some way. But what is that exactly? So the question for you is, what do you see as the role of the IT organization at your institution in generative AI, and what are your goals for GenAI at your school? Sure.
I'll get started. So I think it's fair to say that so I work for Central IT, Harvard University IT, and I wouldn't say that we view ourselves in holding one single role. with regard to generative AI. So for example, we were the primary software developer for the sandbox I mentioned a moment ago, but I wouldn't argue that that was our primary role for generative AI at the university, rather to convene and to enable. So there are a number of IT development teams distributed at Harvard. We've got faculty, we have researchers, all of whom are interested in developing their own applications, doing their own AI experiments. So for us, I think the highest value proposition we can provide is getting them talking, getting them collaborating, and then enabling them to do the work that they need to do, rather than trying to pretend to be a sole source provider for generative AI. So we've been doing that through starting to provide code, running a community of practice for a number of practitioners across the university, providing API access similar to what we heard from University of Michigan a moment ago, starting to provide repeatable building blocks for code and for AI components that teams might use for their own applications, whether it's a tutor bot or a RAG stack or just different options for front ends. So that's that enablement function, I think what I would argue is our highest value proposition at this time.
Erin, how about you?
So good on the line. So I would say there's a lot of work to go around, probably too much work to go around, so it can't just be IT. And as I mentioned earlier, I span both academic and administrative. So it's enabled me to have lots of conversations. One day it'll be technical, the next day it'll be pedagogical, so it's been really interesting. What we found early on about a year ago was that it felt so overwhelming to most anybody who brought it up that they were grasping for anyone to take a lead on anything to get a conversation started. And so they were grateful when somebody drafted a policy document. They were grateful that a group of us came together and started a working group. So I think that we definitely have a role, and if you've got folks on your teams willing to step up and grab onto something that is digestible, then go ahead and do it.
Yeah, that is a great point. I've found the same, that there are a lot of people talking about things, and no one is bothered if someone steps forward and starts writing policy or making recommendations or suggestions. Don, Michigan has an incredibly well-defined vision for AI. I've really found it to be inspiring and valuable to reference that over the months. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on there at Michigan?
So we've had great support from the provost, the president, the CIO, all the way down, realizing that this is a transformative technology and that we need to address it and lead the way, which has been why I've gotten such great support and a combination of staff, financial, to deliver the services. We started our project last summer with 4 real foundational ideas. Privacy, security, accessibility, and equitability. Even though we're a major university, we still have students that are here on Pell Grants. Having the services available to them so that they could actually use this, $20 a month for an open AI service is expensive. We wanted to make sure that everybody had the opportunity to use this. And we also believe from the beginning that the great idea is not locked up in the IT group. The great idea is out in the audience. The great idea of what's going to happen is going to come from our students. It's going to come from administrative staff. It's going to come from somebody else. So how do we make sure that they have tools that they can actually go out and take advantage of this technology?
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about this last night of how do you measure? I started out saying ROI, and I think the message I got from all 3 of our panelists was, now is not really the time to think of that in those terms because we're still figuring some things out. So I would say instead, how do you measure success of the efforts that you're leading up right now? Jefferson.
So thinking a little bit more since our conversation last night, and especially given kind of the enablement and convening role that I described a little earlier for Harvard IT, I think we can start beginning measuring success by actually those functions. Our teams actually starting to create and work on active AI projects using the tools or the forums or the licensing or the APIs that we provide? Is that providing value to them and to their own efforts? So we're certainly not attempting to quantify ROI on generative AI yet within a university setting, but we can start measuring the success of the collaboration, the convening, and the tools we're providing to developers and to administrators. Don,
you were saying there are more qualitative stories, like you're hearing success stories from individuals. In fact, you shared about a faculty member. Can you tell more about that?
Yeah, so we've got a couple of faculty members that were absolutely, on board early in the fall semester. We delivered the opportunities and the tools on August 22nd. School started on August 29th. So there was not a lot of time for people to start developing ahead of time. But we definitely had faculty members that were interested in that. And so we had some great success stories already coming out of the technology component or the technology teaching part of our business school, where they've already done some statistics and showing that students that have used the AI tools have a 5-point increase in their overall scores. So, as far as what are we seeing there, they're seeing some learning outcomes already. We've also had a great opportunity to work with a faculty member in the College of Engineering who came to us and said the hardest part of this course is when we teach the concepts of reduced map. And so he built a tool very quickly that allowed his students to have an AI tutor to focus on that part of his course. And his outcomes were that he's seen better scores and better grades in that particular project than he has ever before. So he's been energized to go ahead and make AI bots for all of his projects in that course.
Erin, you're in a little bit of pre-release mode still. How do you think about what's going to mean success when you release your product?
Right, so we have been asked what's this going to cost and what are you going to make, and I'd be telling you lies, I'd be making up numbers at this point if I gave an actual dollar amount, because we can't do it. We've used all the calculators, and but we just don't know. It's too soon to put a dollar and cents on it, so I'm not comfortable making that up. But like these gentlemen, we've had some success stories. I'm a qualitative storyteller, so I've been able to tell our story. I am sitting between Michigan and Harvard, right, from the University of Delaware. To me, that's a sign of success, that we've been able to talk about this little project from this smaller university on a very smaller scale, but be able to talk about it broadly. So for me, there are some really tangible things. We've come out of COVID burned out and beaten up, my team, from supporting online learning for a few years. They're energized again. They're excited by this project. That, to me, is a success story. I've been able to partner across my university with the library, with the provost's office, with computer science, our AI Center for Excellence, and nobody's looking at this as competition. They're like, wait, this is great, this collaboration. So it's made my job fun again. I think that the dollars and cents will come, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, and I think you make a really great point about just the spectrum of investment and what it takes to actually, step foot into this world. One good use case can, launch a whole lot of conversation, a whole lot of, other good things to come. And I definitely think that you're seeing that. We're trying to do the same. Since you mentioned it, we should speak to the elephant in any AI room, which is, what are the runtime costs looking like, and how are you funding this? That's really, to me, the most interesting thing is, where are you going in the organization to try to get the resources to do these experiments?
So one thing that became clear early on last spring and summer is the degree of interest and excitement from our university CIO, the various school CIOs, the deans, and even the provost for aggressively experimenting with AI. In particular, a number of our academic deans were motivated to see something out there proactively deployed before fall semester, for example. So that request from the academic deans was the green light to do what we needed to from a development perspective. And with that motivation coming from the deans and that sort of that very specific academic deadline, we found that the barriers to funding from a IT budget perspective disappeared overnight. So we had the budget, the funds, the staff, the resources to do what we needed to do for a pretty rapid software development project that I think ran, the heart of it probably ran about 6 weeks, starting in mid-July, going right up until the start of fall semester when we released for the first time. So it was motivation and interest from the deans all the way down.
Yeah, so I'm writing down, and you should too, meet with deans. And I'm joking, but I'm not joking, because after hearing this, I think that's really a great avenue to pursue. Erin, you said something that was very interesting yesterday about possibly pursuing grant funding.
Right, so I started out of the gate going to a foundation that gives large grants to the University of Delaware specifically. and it was really early on in our process, and we hadn't really grasped the way to articulate our very technical project in a way that made sense to non-technical audiences. So we didn't get that grant. But the provost came and said, well, you're not really going to stop, are you? I'm like, of course not. So we just kept going, and we bootstrapped it. We are using existing staff who are passionate about it, partnering students, undergrads, graduate students. So we cobbled together a team, and really our AI costs don't show up on a budget line, right? So nobody's kind of questioning, where are you getting these dollars? They're just doing it as part of their job. My group's culture is one of innovation, so as long as we are working towards teaching and learning solutions, nobody questions the technologies that we're using, so we have that advantage. But because it's grown quite a bit and we've self-organized and gotten ourselves a project manager and really become a very defined agile team with a defined product, there is now a need to start thinking about sort of ongoing funding. So we've partnered with our research computing folks, and they're very versed in NSF grants, for example. So I'm now co-PI on 2 separate grants that are coming out of computer science. One is coming from a College of Education professor. So that's new territory for me. We've never had to rely on grant funding. So I've learned how to navigate that process. We haven't heard it's still in the submission process. But we will go back to that Unidel Foundation this coming spring with a better story to tell and actual visuals and ways to articulate the project that I'm fairly confident that the university will now stand behind us.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. I would love to learn more about those kinds of opportunities myself. It seems like there are a lot of institutions, organizations that are willing and interested to fund small-scale, research learning at different institutions, and so I would love to hear more about that as that develops. So Don, what does the funding situation look like where you're at?
So again, we were funded from the top down, so we got support straight through the President CIO's office. The thing I'll point out, though, is if you look at my title, it's actually Director of Emerging Technology. Right. And so what we're really looking at is how do we build, and AI happens to be the first major emerging technology we're addressing, is how do we actually bring up teams to bring up new technologies. And as an emerging technology group, we don't want to own services. We don't want to be another service provider on campus. We already have service providers on campus. We want to go ahead and figure out how do we bring something up, how do we figure out how to stabilize it, and how do we move it on to somebody else. Otherwise, we're just going to, like every other group, have more services. So, we have this idea of working in a 3-year plan. And the project will either have its own legs and be able to stand up after 3 years, or we will kill it. But this is what's going to allow my team to continue to work on emerging technologies, is because we won't be burdened by the other things we've built. So it's a bunch of different.
Yeah, it's a really interesting model, and the thing that you hear from all of these groups is the people resources are coming from all over the place, and I maybe could characterize them as sort of virtualized teams in some cases. I don't even, are they allocated to projects? How off the books is this staffing that's going on actually right now?
So from a funding perspective, we were all over the map. So we pulled in staff from our academic technologies platform team, from the CTO office, from EA, from our innovation team, and even from other random teams. Once the university CIO declared this as a priority, she freed up our priorities from our existing funded roles to work on this for a specific period of time. But once we got the sandbox deployed, then some of those resources went back to their day jobs. So I think one of the challenges and opportunities we have is, as we have a better understanding of the pipeline for the next wave of applications, the next wave of projects, and convening functions, is what do we need to do from a resource and from a staffing perspective going forward? That's an outstanding question for us. We're approaching on a year-by-year basis for funding and for staffing.
Well, the other thing about staffing as well is just the skill sets that you need to bring to bear. I mean, some of it is traditional IT skills, project management, business analysis, but there are entirely novel skills that you're having to go find. So what is that looking like? Are you able to identify people that are already sort of into this on their own, that they're learning on their own, or are you needing to upskill people? What is your approach to staffing? Maybe we'll go to Erin here.
So the development project that we are working on was the brainchild of one of my software engineers. And so she was already invested and spending a lot of her own time skilling and learning and researching. Through talking about her work and networking, we were able to arrange a partnership with AWS, and I'm sorry, not partnership, collaboration, so it's not a strategic partnership, with AWS, where they brought to the table solutions architects and give us a boot camp resources. So I have on our campus probably the most knowledgeable folks with the AWS architecture on our campus. And some of that was because they wanted it. But also my longer term goal, unlike Dawn, is to offer AI as a service to our campus and have that in my shop. So their boot camp, they met with AWS folks at no cost to get our product developed, but also our team developed. And that's been a tremendous boon to our group.
Don, how about you? I mean, you've got this group, but what about the skilling of the team?
Sure. So I do want to be fair. I don't think that our AI services are necessarily going away. The idea is it won't be an emerging technology in 3 years. It'll be a mainstream technology, and it should be treated that way.
I caught that too. Don's not going to kill AI after birthing it into existence.
But it'll be across everything. It'll be part of the ERP systems. It'll be part of storage systems. It'll be part of network systems. It'll be part of, your collaboration systems, your LMS. It'll be part of everything. So it won't be its own unique technology anymore. So I think that's where the change turns over from that. So I spent my last 28 years in the College of Engineering. I was a year ago realizing that we were not going to be successful if we had 78 different pockets of AI on campus. So I really was in the grassroots effort of saying, hey, we should build a community practice. We should just talk about this. This is the opportunity that was given to me as interim director to run this team. And it was the first time I'd ever gotten the opportunity to cherry pick, self-select the best of the best on campus. So at our high point during the project phase, we probably hit about 12 people, but this would include communications people, our PMs, marketing, everything, everything, all the roles you would think of in a major project. We have 4 staff members today that actually do the work. So it's 2 developers and it's 2 systems admin people. Developers are great. We do everything we can to shield them and keep them in the back office. The sysadmins are actually out doing the consulting, ticket triage, everything that goes to actually running the service. And then I get to be the proud person that sits in front of you and tells you about all the great work they do. So these positions are funded. Now, I mentioned I worked at the university for 28 years, and the reason that's important is that I've got a great network. And so we have absolutely leveraged everybody that wants to come in and say, I've got an interesting thing, I want a project, I want to do this. There are places where I've reached out to directors, IT directors across campus and said, I know this individual, I'd like to bring them into the AI team for this project. They're going to give us some time. We're going to build this resource. This resource we think is both helpful for you, it's helpful for the university, and your person's going to get some AI experience. And when they come back to you, they're going to have better knowledge of the AI tools. And that's been, a very easy sell for the most part. So it's a combination of we have a real team and partnerships.
So when you're bringing folks in, I know you've all had this experience, do you have resources that you send them to, go watch these videos, do these tutorials, do you pair them up with something? How are you actually growing these? I mean, like LangChain is, such a new thing. Nobody, walks in probably with that knowledge. Like, how are you actually getting those skills brought to bear?
All of the above. A mix of informal training, online training, not so much in the way of formal classes or programs at this juncture, but I would say probably one of the #1 methods or means that we've saw for training our AI practitioners has just been hands-on experimentation through either bottom-up innovation programming or top-down innovation program, using these small agile projects and opportunities, especially when you can pair it up with a few different people with different skill sets to really grow that skill base. And I think one thing I'd want to emphasize is when you think about developing an AI application or a framework or a pipeline, the generative AI expertise is only one of the roles that you're going to need to be successful. Yes. So for example, we had a small excited, motivated, curious team that started out with our generative AI sandbox. But quickly, as we formalized into a project and got closer to deployment, we found that more traditional roles like user experience, for example, and of course project management communications, but also data development skills wound up being critical to the success of the application as we got closer to release and maturity. So leveraging those existing skill sets and integrating them into your AI projects, I think, is essential.
Yeah, I think that is an incredible point, and one that I've been trying to make whenever I talk about this to folks at Notre Dame or elsewhere, is traditional IT skills are absolutely in play here. I mean, we've got a small project right now where we're trying to use an LLM to analyze syllabi that come in for transfer courses. And once we get done sort of experimenting with the right way to prompt and get the data into the LLM, the rest is just a data pipeline. It's the same stuff we do every day. And I think about this, Dom, when you talk about sort of infusing this everywhere in the organization. And Erin, you've definitely seen this as well. I mean, your whole product is not necessarily, completely AI. I mean, the knowledge graph is a big deal there. Can you speak a little bit about that?
So he's going to ask the non-technical person about knowledge graphs. Right, so it's been an interesting mix of skills that required lots of different folks. We're not a traditional data management group, so that was sort of one of the things that we lacked. What this project has meant is once we started, every time we hit a roadblock of knowledge, skills, or expertise, we stopped and paused and said, okay, where on campus can we get this, right? We can't hire out consultants, so that's where we would reach out to the expertise in the computer science and the machine learning folks, our AI Center for Excellence, and everybody's been really willing to help us. We've also built in human oversight, right? So it's not all automated. So it required an opt-in partnership with faculty member to use their course content in a way that allowed the faculty member to come back through a system and say, yes, this is accurate. The machine categorized my course topics in a way that I would call them these things, right? So, and they have an ability to approve and to edit in a system that we built. So as materials are being ingested into a language model, it's already been vetted by the faculty member. On the back end, which we're not quite there yet, for the front end, for the user, the student, there will also be a sort of an auditing trail for the student to say, yes, this made sense, all tying back to the original transcript. So, these things are time-coded, right? Yeah. So lots of human oversight on both ends of our product, and lots of different skills that we are figuring out as we go.
Yeah, and you mentioned data as well, and that is such a huge thing. Again, getting back to traditional IT skills, one of the things you really have to figure out is how to get the right data to the language model. And that's, I feel like that's 90% of the problem, because if you can just get the right data into the prompt, then you're going to get the capabilities you want out of the AI. So it's really integrations with other systems. It's data management skills that come to play. And Don, I know you spent a lot of time thinking about this with the capabilities of Maisie. Can you talk a little bit about the way that you're bringing different data sources?
Yeah, so Maisie is the tool that we built. It's built on top of LangChain, and we built it with the connectors we thought were important to the university. So we have a connector that, again, connects out to our Canvas sites, Dropbox, Google. We also can do websites. And so with these tools, you can go ahead and in 10 minutes build a tool, build your own AI for this tool. So, the very common case is, a faculty member wants to build, an assistant for their course. They can go out, the work is really easy for them to connect it to their course. It then, as an observer of their course, it brings in all the content that the students would also have access to. And so at this point, you've made Maisie an expert on your course. The next steps are really, and it's not code, it's natural language, is to build that system prompt. And so basically, you tell the AI how you want it to use the knowledge you've just given it. So this could turn into, things like, I want it to answer questions, but here's how I want it to answer questions. So that the example that we often give is that, many times you don't want the AI just to give the students the answer. You want them to, how would you think we should find the answer? Here's some resources that you might want to evaluate. Teach them to teach them, not just give them the answer. But there are definitely things that you don't want to use that for. So this is, again, kind of where the prompting comes in. So the example I used last night is, when's the final? I don't need the AI to come back and go, when do you think the final is? There's some of the technique there is to say, on course logistic questions, you should answer directly. On course content, you should help the student, and educate the student. And so this is what takes a little bit of time, but you can leave the default system prompt we provide, and you get a good tool. It's just about what do you want to do above and beyond that. So, can you be done in 10 minutes? Absolutely. Do some people take, several hours to get that prompt just the way they want it? Yeah, they do. I think the other thing that I'll mention that's a little bit different in the way we're thinking about it, because we think so strongly about privacy, nobody gets to review the prompts, nobody gets to review the answers. So if a student is working with the tool, they should feel that they can use the tool. There is no oversight. My faculty member is not trying to catch me cheating. They have an opt-in option, though, if they have a concern, if they think they've got a wrong answer, this type of thing, that they can actually opt in and submit that answer or conversation back to the faculty member. So again, they are in control of privacy. And so we took that out to that level. And again, I think that's part of what makes us unique as well.
Yeah, and the thing that's interesting about what's going on in Michigan, when you built this stack, a RAG stack in the nerdy parlance of AI, retrieval augmented generation, bring your docs to a chatbot, create custom chatbots based on the data that you give it. And then I saw OpenAI come out with GPTs. And one of my first thoughts was, oh no, did they just, eat Michigan's lunch? And I think really the answer is no. I mean, for various reasons, it's a walled garden, it's expensive, but one of the things that you've done is really reduce the friction around bringing resources to which the students, faculty, and staff have access, and it's that tight integration that to me really differentiates what you're doing there.
I agree, and I think that, as we're looking at this, the things that are on our roadmap make this so much fun looking forward. The idea of being able to use Maisie and make a data source a database. And now you can ask natural language questions to the database. And so we're not doing anything special. It's not using any system level tokens. We are using your credentials to that database. You give it the connection string, but I can now ask it a question about how many faculty members in the College of Engineering. You would think that should be an easy question. It's not. How many students are at the university? Again, you'd think that's an easy question, but it's not. And these tools go out, and you don't have to be an SQL programmer to do this. The tool itself is going out and it's reviewing the schema. It's reviewing the relationships. It's trying to decide what's in the information, and then it gives you the answer as a natural text answer. Now, the first question is, well, how do I know it gave me the right answer? Well, we also have it give you the SQL statement as well. So if you know SQL, you can read it. If you don't know SQL, you can share it with somebody that says, is this right? If you've got concerns, or you can take that statement and run it again for yourself. All sorts of opportunities there.
We've heard people talk about data for years. Data is the new gold. Data is so valuable. It's your greatest asset. I think that is especially true in this case with AI, because now it's something that you can feed to a model, get answers out, get new insights out of. And I mean, Erin, you've really seen this because you had a trove of valuable data. So tell a little bit about what's powering.
Well, it's that trove that really got us buy-in initially when a company like AWS heard you had 18 years worth of stored transcripts. Well, nobody's got that, right? Most people purge their stuff, but ours was home built. So we had access to resources that we could leverage. So that was really opened a lot of doors for us. What I'm most excited about, though, is, and again, I'm not a technical person, but I've had enough conversations to understand the power of knowledge graphs. And that's what most excites me, because that's the thing so I've got a team that is taking the data and not storing it in a flat relational database. They're building graphs to connect data points and topics within a course initially across multiple transcripts. So the course we're working with now is a general psych class with 3,000 recorded videos. So they're able to take those content pieces and connect them across every time this course was taught. For me, looking a number of years out, that knowledge graph concept is the thing that's going to allow us to collect data from all of our disparate systems across campus and have one entry point to that information in connected ways. So it's pretty exciting. It's fairly new for us, and I don't know that a lot of folks are really starting to use that, but we're getting a lot of questions from other institutions like, hey, how are you doing this? It'll be interesting to see where that goes.
Yeah, I think that's exciting. I mean, their system is powered on thousands of hours, years worth of lecture capture. And so, it gets me thinking, what are the, treasure troves of data that we have? And the lesson here is to reverse everything that we've been saying to people, which is never delete anything ever. Okay, you heard it here first. So Jefferson, how are you thinking about data management? What are those areas of opportunity you have?
Sure. So I think a couple of things. Going back to this idea of having data as one of the core skill sets for your AI development teams. Just anecdotally, I recall really funny scenarios wherein our AI developer or developers were really struggling with getting structured data like in a CSV properly chunked into a RAG stack and then processed accordingly. And it was a non-trivial problem for it. It started looking like we're going to have to give up on CSVs within our document ingestion for RAG. And for an experienced data developer, that's a simple exercise of pagination and associating your metadata with each of the pages you create coming out of that CSV before you chunk it into your vector database. So, having those data management skills in your application development, I think, is a key thing. But also, looking forward, because that's just a funny anecdote from the past. Looking forward, what I'm sort of struck by from an AI roadmap perspective is, the last year, we've done all this experimentation on getting basic access to generative AI and perhaps a single LLM or maybe multiple LLMs depending upon the goals of your project. And then once you started gaining some facility in that, you started layering on things like RAG. Okay, I have these documents, I have this data that I would like to be useful to pose to my AI application, whether it's a file upload or perhaps a more domain-specific chatbot, perhaps for your HR policies or for your course. So you start developing these RAG applications for your chatbots. And what I'm struck by is sort of the next interesting opportunity for AI development is this idea of semantic routing, that you develop this rich AI application where you might pose questions that the LLM can answer. You might pose questions that your RAG data can provide answers to, those HR policies. But then you ask questions about the number of students currently enrolled in the university, and you really don't want to flatten that out into a document, ingest it into RAG, and then get it indexed. That's a real-time query, and you want to maintain it as a real-time query. So how do you develop your application to recognize when are these questions real-time and should be routed to an API call or a database call versus interrogating the RAG stack versus just asking the LLM? So there are all these interesting data management-oriented solutions around building a semantic layer and then routing accordingly for the next wave of applications. So for me, that's a really exciting opportunity for the next wave of projects that we'd like to tackle.
Yeah, I agree. And you might be able to get the LLM to actually make that judgment call at the beginning. Okay, let's pivot a little bit because we've touched on this from time to time about engagement with campus. And so we know that we've got faculty, we've got staff, we've got students, and there are all kinds of different levels of sort of experience with AI, literacy, knowledge of what AI does. So I know some of you have communities of practice that you put together. How are you engaging with campus, and what are your goals in that? Starting in here.
Sure. So at Harvard, we're now in our third month of a university-wide AI community of practice that myself and a couple of peers have been facilitating at Harvard. It spans IT practitioners, researchers, faculty, as well as some students, although a little less on the student side at this particular juncture. But the idea has been to get people talking, sharing what they're doing, sharing their use cases, and also beginning to collaborate on potential shared software. So if there are 10 different development teams that need to do RAG, for example, can we produce a shared RAG pattern that would accelerate their time, sort of their time to market or their time to release without having to kind of reproduce the wheel, I suppose. It's also an opportunity for vendor engagement where appropriate, and really documenting what use cases and what hard problems are out there, and working together on it. So it's the last meeting we had I think about 102 people across the university, across essentially every school at Harvard was represented and very actively engaged. And it's actually taking up a lot more of my time these days than the software stuff.
Yeah, I've seen the same. We put out a call. I thought I was just going to get developers who were sort of interested in hacking, and I got a very wide response, over 100 people, and that's now spawned off multiple groups.
Absolutely.
Erin, what are you seeing?
So one, at the risk of, rather than repeating myself and talk about the things we've already done, we do have an IT project management office, and they have a somewhat nascent technology request process that if you want to buy software out in the colleges, sources, do you have funding, and who are your stakeholders, et cetera. And then they sort of run point and gather the proper stakeholders. And we're starting to funnel some of the AI requests for use cases through that same process. And now we've been able to assemble the right folks, I think, both from the academic side, IT security, OGC, our general counsel, data privacy. And so I've spent a lot of time with that group because use cases are now starting to pop up across campus. And it could be everything from, I want to buy a license for Microsoft Copilot, or Zoom just enabled AI companions. Are we okay with this? So it's getting into both cost-oriented requests and software purchases, but also feature requests and just a place to funnel ideas to gather. Now, it does slow down the process. I'm at the point now where, like, can we just make a decision on Zoom AI? Because everybody, has these fears and they weigh in. So it is a little bit cautious, but I think I'm okay with it as long as we start to see some progress.
Yeah, I want to come back to that topic. Don, how about community engagement?
I'm going to answer the question that I want to answer, not the question that you asked me.
That's how you do it. It's a truly political...
I go out and I do these talks on campus all the time, and two questions I always get are, when is Skynet coming? And the other question is, when is AI taking my job? Yeah. And I really don't believe AI will take your job. You can allow somebody who has AI skills to take your job, or you can decide that you're not going to be involved, that you're not ready, you're not going to engage in this, and I think you will place yourself out of your job going forward. Because if there's a job posting that says I'm looking for somebody with AI skills and you choose not to apply for it, you've weeded yourself out. If you can't answer that one or two questions, tell me about your AI skills. I used AI to write my resume and to apply for this job. If you gave me that answer today, that would be totally acceptable in my world. It shows me that you're engaging with the technology. Now, in a couple years, I want more than that. But if I'm asking that question today, and today I am already seeing this question on desired requirements, I think in 3 years it's a requirement. People want this, right? People are going to expect this. So my passion project really is to get those staff members that don't know how to get started up and engaged. So I don't think I actually mentioned this last night, but when I get back to campus, we're starting what we call the 8-week AI challenge. Once a week for the 8 weeks, you will receive an email. It has a short introduction. I'll send this whole thing to you.
Oh, thank you.
We're going to send you an email. The email is going to have an AI challenge for that week. Many of them are base level, get you started, understand the tools, understand privacy, understand security, and in the first 4 weeks, it's general knowledge across for everybody, to get people just engaged. And when we say here's how to use this tool, put a prompt in. I don't know what a prompt is. We're giving you an example. If you can't come up with your own prompt, here's an example prompt you can use that shows you how to use the tools. Because I need that engagement. I don't want, that, and it's a big portion of my staff. I see that we've got 10%, maybe 15% at the top that are self-motivated and they're chasing after it. I know I've got 20% at the bottom. They're like, I'm retiring in 18 months. I don't care what you say. I'm not changing. I just want to get my job done. I want to retire. That leaves me, if my math is right, something like 70% in the middle, right, that don't know how to get started. That's my passion. That's who I want to get started, and this is one of the ways we're starting it.
I love it. I'm completely stealing that.
That's cool.
I'll send it all to you. Yeah, I'll send it all to you.
Jefferson.
One other comment I wanted to make that I perhaps was remiss in mentioning in my comments earlier is the community of practice work that I described earlier was largely IT-driven and IT organized. However, that is by no means the only work and collaboration that's happening for AI across the university. So just some other examples that you may find in your own universities or you should consider fostering in your universities. So we've got a dean's committee on AI, a CIO council committee on AI, administrative and operations, so our central administration, HR, finance, et cetera, they're actually meeting and discussing and prioritizing use cases for AI within their respective domains. And then I can think of at least 2 teaching and excellence programs that are focused on AI outreach, enablement, instruction, idea generation, and training for faculty at Harvard. And many of those groups have been, at least informally and sometimes more formally, collaborating and communicating and even coordinating who's doing what with regards to outreach at the university.
Yeah, that's a good point. There are a lot of these types of groups springing up. We've seen this in Notre Dame as well. And I think one way that IT is uniquely positioned is sort of be the bridge to all these groups. Go out and find who's talking about AI on campus. If there's nobody, start up that conversation. My experience, maybe this is unique, but I don't think so, is that nobody's going to stop you because it's like, with the policies and everything. I think leadership is looking for people who are willing to take some initiative on this stuff. So if you don't see the community around you, go build it, and then try to build the bridges to the pockets that are doing it elsewhere. Yes, so, that's sort of engagement. Oh, yeah, we got a question. Did we? Sorry, you weren't just like stretching. Please do, come on up.
Hi. So I wanted to ask a question to kind of just see how you're all thinking about AI and your vendor engagement. So, for example, I'm from ServiceNow, and we're using accessibility and AI as a space of innovation. And so I just wanted to hear more about, are you pushing your vendors to lean into the AI space? Are you asking them questions about how they're utilizing AI in the kinds of updates and products that you've already signed up for, that you're already using, and you would like more information from us about that? Like what kind of engagement is happening there? Because ServiceNow is a whole certification skill set, right? That's an area to upskill your faculty, your students in. And we would love to talk with you about what we're doing for AI and accessibility in particular in the public sector space. So we'd love to hear more about this.
So pleased to know that the first person in our organization with AI in their title works for the ServiceNow team, and that's so that's just us. But what about the panel?
I think we're looking at where my team's looking at right now is to come up with what it looks like for a framework to engage with our vendors. So I think it's great to know that everybody's going to have their plus AI, plus Copilot, plus whatever coming forward, and we want to make sure that we're asking the right questions about that. So a simple question would be, where are you processing your data? That actually might impact what type of data I can use in your service, because I can't have for some I'll think of our naval department. They can't have data in there that's going to potentially be exported outside the U.S.
Yeah.
So understanding that your data set is here, understanding your security, your privacy, these types of things, what does all that look like? The other thing that I think, as much as we're trying to figure out how to get people in, I also, in some places, need to be able to opt people out. And again, I come back to people that have these DoD contracts and things like that. This is an oversimplification of how this works, but there are certain things that are not sensitive data when they're not in context. So I can have some information, and I'm again making this up. Give me a little leverage here. I could have information about flame temperatures in one place, and that's probably not sensitive data. If I tell you that's the temperatures for a J-1 rocket that's being used for something in the Defense Department, if I put that all in context, now it's sensitive data. What I can't have is an AI solution being helpful and putting that data in context for me, because now it has just made it sensitive data, right? So again, I think there's lots of things that are going to happen in this space, and so it's a combination of where tools are today saying we don't have granular access controls at this point versus I need hyper granular access controls.
Right.
Right. So, depending where the vendors are, that's part of the conversation is where are you in access controls,
Yeah.
and where are you in being able to manage sensitive data.
I would highlight Microsoft and GitHub as, in my opinion, the gold standard right now. They have a page called the GitHub Copilot Trust Center, and it answers every last question you could possibly have about handling the data that you take or give them whenever you plug in that tool. Other thoughts on
Well,
vendors?
return to our technology review process, which is the thing that vendors all go through, and the contracts and procurement is part of that process as well. And it's turning that process a little bit sideways because we weren't prepared for analyzing contracts for features like geolocation tracking, and and when you layer on FERPA and HIPAA requirements, that takes time to process. What we're finding from some of the ed tech vendors, not the big players, they're just turning on these features, and in some cases not allowing an admin at the institution to turn it off. And they're reaching out directly to faculty members and saying, hey, we have this great new feature. And it's like, oh my gosh. So our poor data privacy officer is losing her mind and trying to find case law that doesn't exist and trying to find comparisons. So I would say just building in more runway time for us to figure out how to now review those pieces of contracts,
To really operationalize.
and being sensitive to the requirements that we have on FERPA and what is being collected.
One comment I would make is, so certainly as much custom software development as we've been doing in the generative AI space, we've also been definitely exploring and piloting various sort of embedded and vended generative AI solutions in a variety of applications and SaaS and productivity suites that we use at Harvard. So we're very interested and motivated to explore that. The idea of a standalone chatbot always in isolation is not necessarily the model that's going to extend into the future. Whether it's Copilot or Duet or something like this, the idea of embedded AI in the applications we already use is compelling. So we've been willing to explore and have conversations with our vendors. It's what's funny though is that so many vendors are doing things at the same time, and to the point that was just made a moment ago, that sometimes it just kind of pops up. So the degree to which there are well-communicated roadmaps and horizon reports where we can start prioritizing. Okay, so we know that ServiceNow, for example, is going to have a chatbot integrated into the knowledge base, view, or I just made that up as an example, but understanding that from a roadmap perspective can start helping us prioritize the limited number of vendor engagements we can do for embedding AI in the applications we use, because we can't tackle everything at the same time, but knowing in advance what's coming or what's on the roadmap is helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense, and it's helpful feedback because on our different product advisory councils and things like that, we do share our roadmaps and what's coming up, and so accessibility, that's the team I'm on. It's a unique product team in that we are getting to play with some of the things that are already being rolled out, like the Now Assist AI chatbot on our proprietary LLM, right, where we are trying to, be very careful about where we're storing our data and how we are protecting the privacy of all of our customers, but thinking also outside the box too. So how do we push forward using AI and solve accessibility problems, for example? And we're developing a voice-enabled chatbot where you can interact with the entire UI just through speaking to it, right? And so it solves problems for a variety of users and is a universal design solution. So we're trying to take a yes and approach of meeting customers where they're at, but also communicating things that are coming up so that, as much as possible, we're trying to develop programs that can help unblock the pain points that you're feeling at your individual campuses around things like accessibility, upskilling both staff and faculty, anticipating needs of a diverse, set of users in the student body. I guess
I'm going to go back to one of
meet you at
Jefferson's.
that problem.
I'm going to go back to one of Jefferson's comments earlier about the idea of mapping and routing to answer your questions. I think you also need to think about what does it look like to have your data ingested by somebody else. I don't need 100 islands of AI solutions out there.
Yeah.
Right? I want to be able to, interact with a connector service of AI that I can grab and get the information that I need. As an end user, I don't care that it's in ServiceNow. I don't care it's in TDX. I don't care it's in Oracle. I just want the answer.
Right.
And so the tools that will help me interconnect with all of those services to get the information I need is a lot more important than having everything with its own unique AI.
Yeah, agreed. And I think the need for policy is going to increase on how to get these things to network, integrate, talk to each other
Right.
without cannibalizing and potentially leaking sensitive data.
Yeah, so that gets back to what you were talking about is how do we actually, at our institutions, approve, we've got new AI tools, but we've also got existing established relationships with vendors who are bringing AI features to bear. And so we're getting a lot of questions about can we turn this or that on. And so how, do you find that this is a uniquely different process, set of circumstances with this technology that requires new ways of thinking about software approvals, or is it just kind of a new spin on what we've always done?
Early on at Harvard, our Chief Information Security and Data Privacy Officer asserted from a strategy perspective that we should be treating the data and risk challenges associated with AI in a manner similar to how we've been doing risk management for data for other applications and other technologies, whether it was SaaS or moving to the cloud, et cetera. So we already had a well-articulated set of data classification principles and policies. Rather than inventing something new for AI, we took those same principles, those same policies, and then started applying them to AI applications. That made for a much easier framework for decision-making for AI that way.
Yeah, I think we're looking at a lot of the same questions around data handling, data retention that we always have. We've had a conversation recently where I think this is a good idea. The thing that triggers scrutiny at Notre Dame is, it comes from our procurement, and it's a lot about dollar thresholds. But we need to introduce different thresholds that are about data sensitivity and how you're using it, and so we're exploring that now. See some nodding over here. Erin, thoughts? Or Don?
Yeah, the other thing, with all these types of solutions, yes, I've got a nice budget right now, and I'm very happy to be able to spend money, but we're always looking at build versus buy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When does it make sense to go ahead and invest in our own team and build a minimally viable product that's going to meet our needs versus rolling out the checkbook?
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because at Notre Dame our philosophy is more build over buy. We build whenever it, sorry, strike that, reverse it, buy over build. And we build when it tends to be something that's more mission critical and unique. And right now I think these tools, like what you have built at Michigan, is that. Like, it doesn't exist, you can't go out and buy it. The first company that gets RAG as a service really solved is going to do very well. How has your thinking on buy over build evolved over just this last year as you see this sort of race to platformize stuff?
We started out definitely with more of a build mindset last summer, and as aggressively as the various vendors that we already work with have been updating roadmaps and iterating on technology, there's a lot more interest in buy as well. And I don't think it's ever going to be one versus the other. I think it's going to be a strategic mix of both, but certainly our interest in the buy space has only grown over time as the products in the market has matured.
Yeah, there's a sense of, hey, you might be excited about this now, but wait a month, wait 2 months. Right. So, Erin, what do you think?
Do we want to pay attention to the fact that Bob's been sitting there for a while?
No, go ahead.
Okay. You want to hear my thoughts?
He's just stretching his legs.
So I will be brief, but because I come from the teaching and learning space, I tend to love the build portion of this.
Oh, me too.
Right, because I'm building my workforce, I'm building my team skills, and we're bringing in students as part of this, and they're learning, right? They don't learn so much when we buy products and they just manage cloud services. So I do agree. I think it's a strategic mix of both, but I think some of these AI use cases lend themselves to building something, and maybe it's not sustainable ongoing, but there is joy in the building.
Yeah, there will always be that differentiated layer, but sort of how high up the stack you go. Don, what are your thoughts on this?
Oh, I think I'm the one that brought up the idea of build versus buy. Yeah, no, I think that this is exactly the type of thing we're looking at. As an example, should we build a connector to Maisie that works directly with Zoom and goes ahead and does your your meeting reports and that type of stuff, or index that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Like
I mean,
it seems like it would be cheaper. I mean, but again,
and
we
possibly more accurate.
Well, maybe, but I also am concerned that it won't be as feature rich, because we don't have a team that's solely focused on that. It's going to be a point in time solution. We're going to build it. We will, maintain it on some regular basis, but.
Okay. Hi, Bob.
Okay. So yeah, it's the classic SaaS thing of control over innovation, right?
Of course.
Right, release some control. So I have two questions, but given the amount of time, I'll ask the bigger one first. So the generative part of generative AI, if you'd been earlier this week on Tuesday, there were a couple of big sessions about like the overwhelming amount of storage problems we have now for data.
And don't delete anything.
And don't delete anything, right? So these, you talked about your sources of data, but are you thinking about or running into issues about all the data that's being generated and what that means for storage?
I would add to that intellectual property, because that came up as well.
I think that we get into this. There's all sorts of conversations about how are we consuming resources, what's the impact of the resources we're consuming, and this could be in the GPU space or the storage space or any space. This is definitely doing more, taking more, generating more heat. Everything that has been a challenge in IT for the last 50 plus years. So some of that's not changed. We're doing more of it faster. But yeah, I think that I agree that there's people that want to store stuff, but the storage is not a new issue, right?
Right, but the pace of creation of content, I think, is going to accelerate. So that who's responsible for deleting the Word doc from 2015?
Nobody does it today until you have Google come on campus and say, we're going to have these new storage requirements, new quotas.
Right.
And then all of a sudden everybody has to go back and do some cleanup. And have I cleaned stuff up that I wanted back? Yep. But I spent many years as an email administrator, and my email box was the first one to go because I knew that if I blew up my own email box, one, nobody would care, and I'd get more email tomorrow. So, it wasn't a concern. So yeah, I think there's truth, but think about this also. Again, I'm going to tell you it's not new. When we went from written text to print text, all of a sudden there was a totally different ability to create lots more books, bigger libraries, all this type of stuff, and people had to figure that out, right? We're just going to have to figure this out again.
Yeah.
Now, are we going to get better? Is something going to change where maybe the AI can help us, re-index, manage storage different, do other things with it? Maybe. I would love to have a smart storage solution that can find the files that I want. Because I don't care what service you're using,
right.
You can't find files today.
Right.
You've all had this problem at least once. It's like, I know it was here. I know it was called this.
I just put all my metadata in the Google title.
Right, but now you can't actually figure out which file it is because you've got 50 files with the same block of metadata and the visible text, right? So it just doesn't work.
So, well, we should probably be cognizant of time. But this conversation could go forever. We would love to keep doing this. We'll stick around. We'll answer more questions, but I don't want to make anybody late. I think I would ask just one last quick parting thoughts. What would you tell people looking to get started? One bit of advice. Go.
Find curious people. Find people that are willing and interested to learn. They don't need to start out being experts. The level of low code and no code options for innovation in generative AI are exploding and amazing. So find people that are curious and willing to learn and be willing to experiment and prototype. Don't waterfall this. Just try it out. Break it. Iterate. Keep going and learn.
Nice. Erin.
Along those lines, pick one small digestible thing that falls in your area of expertise, but be prepared for it to blow up.
Done.
I think my answer is you've just got to get started. You just have to solve one problem at a time. And just do it.
Yeah,
Have
just
fun.
do it. Yeah. All right. Thank you all so much. Thank you to the panelists. Appreciate you. All right, we're going to do a picture up here. This one's for me. This one's for the gram, as they say. I don't use Instagram. All right. By the way, if you're still here, I want to show you one more slide.
And if you're not still here, you're going to show it anyway.
Yeah, this will be a bit. This is the Higher Ed Collaboration Hub at Slack iStart. It's got all these fine folks, as well as many, many others in higher ed. We're up to about 250 people across many institutions. Please do join the conversation. There's places to talk about general AI happenings and the Builder Chat section. We would love to have you join. So, thank you all. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Internet, too. And safe travels, everybody.